This is gonna be an absolute banger of a video, I can just feel it. So, if you ever try to reverse hair loss naturally, you're gonna notice very quickly that a lot of people are gonna tell you things like, oh, you're coping, oh, there's no evidence for this, oh, there's no evidence for that. And essentially, they're gonna try to discourage you in your efforts and to push you towards dangerous pharmaceutical drugs while severely underplaying the kind of side effects that you can get from those. So we're gonna address all of this shit today, and I'll also explain to you how hair loss actually works, because nobody actually understands it because they rely on the very shaky mainstream understanding of it that has been crafted to sell certain products, but we'll get into that later. So first of all, let's address the boogeyman, the elephant in the room, which is DHT. Okay, people think that DHT is the one cause of hair loss, and some people are sensitive to it, some people are not sensitive to it. Therefore, if you're sensitive to DHT, then you get on DHT blockers, and that's how you reverse hair loss, and that's the only thing that exists, right? But this idea completely falls apart if you do more than 2 seconds of research, because people who were affected by androgenic alopecia managed to regrow hair when injected with Botox into their scalp. What does Botox do? It reduces the tension in the scalp musculature, okay? But not only that, they've also done experiments where they actually put pig fat, so lard, on people's scalps, and it managed to regrow a substantial amount of hair because nutrient delivery was directly applied to the scalp. Now, the second issue with the DHT theory is that older men with very, very suppressed levels of androgenic hormones, including DHT, they don't regrow hair, and their hair loss isn't getting particularly better. It only gets worse as people age. So why does hair loss in most men get worse as they age as their DHT levels go down? It doesn't make any sense, right? Also, testosterone levels have gone down significantly in the last 50 years, 100 years, whatever, but the rates of androgenic alopecia, of male pattern baldness, have only gone up substantially, okay? People with insanely low levels of testosterone, so very little DHT that can actually be converted, are still losing their hair. Now, why does finasteride, dutasteride work? Well, it's very simple. That's because by suppressing it down to the levels of a literal woman, then of course there's not going to be enough DHT to react to an inflamed scalp. Okay, and this is what we're going to get into now. What they have noticed is that with men that are losing their hair, there is a higher amount of androgenic activity in the scalp. Okay, so DHT essentially mobilizes itself in the scalp in some men, while it doesn't in other men, irrespective of genetic sensitivity. Okay, however, there is a lie, there is a false conclusion that has been drawn from this fact, and it's the idea that DHT attacks your hair follicles. Okay, so DHT just attacks the hair follicles in your temples, in your crown, just because it wants to? Just selectively, DHT has a bone to pick with hair in specific places on your scalp? It doesn't make any sense. If DHT gets mobilized to the scalp and attacks the hair follicles, then it would make your hair follicles shrink everywhere, uniformly. It wouldn't have this distinct pattern. Now, why is the Norwood pattern specifically concerned with the temples and the crown? Well, you have to look at the anatomy of the scalp, alright? The scalp musculature goes exactly like this. So basically, you start losing hair in this pattern that follows precisely the musculature under your scalp, alright? So what is actually occurring, and the reason why injecting Botox in the scalp leads to regrowth irrespective of DHT sensitivity, is because what happens when there is a higher androgenic activity in people's scalps, which is caused by scalp inflammation, by the way, but we're gonna get to that shortly. What happens is that the scalp gets tighter. And as the scalp gets tighter, there is less blood circulation that can arrive to the hair follicle. And eventually this leads to the calcification of the scalp, and eventually it becomes scar tissue. And that's when parts of the scalp or the whole scalp becomes shiny and you're completely bald, okay? But this starts under the scalp musculature due to the tension that is a genetic response from higher androgenic activity. Now, why do some people have higher DHT activity in their scalp? Well, it's because of scalp inflammation. Now, I must say, there is not a whole lot of research that dives this deep into the root causes of hair loss. And there's a very simple reason why. It's because there is no money to be made there, okay? It's much better to put people on a pill which also feminizes them, as DHT is the most masculinizing hormone in the entire body. Anybody who tells you that it's useless after puberty doesn't know what they're talking about whatsoever. They're just parroting other people who themselves don't know what they're talking about, alright? So, scalp inflammation can be caused by a variety of things. The first culprit is going to be hair product usage. Yes, shampoo actually causes hair loss. I still don't understand how people haven't made the connection yet that blasting your scalp with harmful chemicals that you cannot ingest, and those harmful chemicals permeate through the scalp as they do through the skin barrier and cause damage to the hair follicles, causes the overproduction of oil in the case of shampoo, which stresses the scalp and which leads to a good amount of scalp inflammation, okay? Now, everybody's threshold of scalp inflammation is different. Some people can get away with reducing scalp inflammation a certain amount until they stop experiencing loss, and some people have to take all the different precautions to get rid of that inflammation altogether. Not everyone gets the same response from the same amount of scalp inflammation. That's what genetic variation is. Scalp inflammation can also be caused by diet, by vitamin deficiencies. 86% of men affected by androgenic alopecia are vitamin D deficient. They're not getting enough sun. Their gut microbiome is all messed up from all the slop they're consuming, from all the gluten they're consuming, from all these different things. It's a multi-layered issue. And also, you have to understand that the body detoxifies through the hair as well. This is why when you do a hair mineral analysis, you're able to tell which minerals you're deficient in, which minerals you're toxic in, etc. It's because a lot of it actually comes to your hair and gets excreted. So, if you manage to get rid of heavy metal toxicity while supercharging your hair follicles with the proper minerals that they need to grow, then you're tackling another bottleneck of hair loss. And you need to understand that a lot of these good minerals actually help in the detoxification of the bad ones. But there's also other ways to detoxify, such as various dietary interventions, clay consumption, heat therapy, etc. It is quite a complex issue because there's many bottlenecks that you have to tackle. Of course, there's reducing scalp inflammation, but there's also increasing the hair growth itself, increasing the blood flow delivery to the scalp. So basically, it is through a combination of reducing scalp inflammation while increasing things like blood flow, things like nutrient delivery, because ideally what you want to do is have a very mineral dense diet where you get things like iodine, things like selenium, copper, iron, zinc, especially zinc, silica. All of those different things, if you can get them at a high dose and supercharge your scalp with blood flow, you're gonna experience significant growth. And guess what? You should know by now that the main issue of hair loss is that there's no more nutrients that can be delivered to the hair follicle due to the calcification of the scalp caused by DHT in genetic sensitive people. So, on top of that, on top of solving those issues, you can actually nourish your hair follicles directly through nutrient-dense hair masks, through mixing a bunch of different things, egg, butter, spices, collagen, bone marrow, just a bunch of different things. You can really get creative with those hair masks as long as they have like the proper nutrient density and contain what your hair needs for growth. then you apply it to your scalp and your hair, because it also helps overall hair quality, shine, thickness, etc. And you leave it on for hours. Bro, a lot of people say, oh, the hair masks don't work. Bro, they leave it on for 15 minutes. What is that? I leave my hair masks on for 4, 5, 6, 7 hours at a time. Okay? And I do this every single week, sometimes bi-weekly. If you're into this whole thing of maximizing your hair naturally, having it be as beautiful as possible, reversing loss, then yeah, you're gonna have to craft a whole routine around it and be consistent. It's the same as training. People don't seem to have a problem with working out every day and preparing their meals and doing all these different things to grow muscle. But then when I tell them what to do in order to reverse hair loss and to grow hair in the fastest possible way naturally, then they're like, oh, but that's too much. That's, at the end of the day, if you truly want it, you'll find a way to slot it into your routine. And this path is much more rewarding than taking chemically castrating drugs or give yourself heart palpitations and a whole plethora of side effects, which these people who report them get heavily silenced by these scientific zealots. And there's something that I also need to tell you about finasteride, dutasteride, is that a lot of the people who don't notice the side effects is because they've never actually had a high level of androgenic hormones. Is because they've never actually functioned properly like a man. They've never actually felt what it's like to have this energy which makes you want to conquer the world completely and utterly. Okay, they've never actually had that because they are quite literally slaves on garbage diets who get no sunlight. Some of them actually avoid sunlight because they're just bought into basically every single aspect of health propaganda you can think of, right? And they just have all of these habits stacked, these negative habits, to the point where they don't know what it feels to actually perform at a high level. They don't even know what it feels like to have vitality as a man. So when they take finasteride, they don't feel that much of a difference because they are spiritually castrated men who have also physically castrated themselves by living like complete and utter slobs. So think about that. And of course, results are gonna change from people to people because not everybody has the same bottlenecks when it comes to hair loss. Not everybody gets scalp inflammation from the same things. Some people might need to fix more bottlenecks, some people might need to fix less bottlenecks. But the fact of the matter is that if you actually fix all of them, then it's physically impossible to lose hair. Animals do not lose their hair in nature unless they are excessively stressed or malnourished or physically degenerating due to aging, or they are put in an unnatural environment, aka a zoo, for example. Guess what? We are the zoo animals as humans. We are being bombarded with toxins every single day. And some of them you just can't avoid. So in order to do that, you have to go the extra mile to supercharge growth. But yeah, most people are incapable of actual thinking. They would much rather be spoon-fed by an authority who doesn't even have your best interest at heart because of laziness, arrogance, and quite frankly, stupidity. And many people, they just regurgitate things that they've heard without thinking about it for 2 seconds. They say that, oh, the blood flow theory is cope and doesn't make any sense. Bro, the reason why the hair follicles fall, even if you want to believe the DHT theory or whatever, is because there is no more blood delivery to the follicle. So it keeps shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. That's literally the effect that is caused by DHT, even in your model of hair loss, okay? Also, what about minoxidil? You can't be a minoxidil shill and simultaneously believe that blood flow has nothing to do with hair loss, that blood flow has nothing to do with hair growth, when the only thing minoxidil does, the only growth stimulus that it causes is true vasodilation, which is literally increased blood flow to the hair follicles. So, if we are able to increase blood flow through things like high-dose essential oils, like microneedling, and actually doing it frequently every other day once your scalp gets used to it, and a variety of other things, you can do inversion therapy as well. There's many ways to make blood flow rush to the hair follicles. Then you're gonna experience faster growth. You're gonna experience regrowth, provided that you solve the issue of scalp inflammation first. It's really funny how these people, their one holy grail argument is, oh, but there's no evidence. there is a lack of evidence in some of the things that you're saying. Yeah. As I said before, there is no incentive whatsoever, because again, these studies take a lot of funding. For that funding to be put into those studies, there has to be an incentive. And there is no incentive to figure out natural cures for hair loss when there's $1 billion industry built around it, which would entirely collapse if the entirety of the population figured out how to do it naturally, right? You will encounter these people on your own regrowth journey, right? They'll tell you things like, oh, it's Scalp, oh, it's this or it's that. Bro, the problem is that everybody who says that is an NPC, is a robot. They can only operate from what is shown to them. Oh, show me the study, show me the evidence. And they just can't think that there are answers that have not been discovered yet, because there are little bitches who are too afraid to experiment, who are too afraid to venture out into the unknown and figure out things that haven't been discovered yet, right? That's the difference between me and these people. I was not satisfied with the current mainstream theory of hair loss, so I tried a bunch of different things. I did a lot of experiments, and believe it or not, I did more research than a lot of these science-based gurus ever actually did. But the existing research does not tell the whole story, right? And there are things that you can only figure out through trial and error, through personal experimentation, all right? It's the same thing for other looks maxing methods that are, oh, but there's no evidence proving it. Yeah, no shit. Nobody's interested in pouring money into that stuff, let alone for hair loss, because there is a negative incentive in doing so. So yeah, don't fall for the evidence-based scam, because those people 50 years ago, when all the scientific studies suggested that tobacco was good for you, because all the scientific institutes were paid by big tobacco to arrive to this conclusion, so you can publish it into the mainstream so you can sell more cigarettes, these people who are slaves to the religion of scientism would have believed it. Those people who are slaves to that religion would have believed years and years ago that cholesterol is bad for you. That if you eat more than 1 egg a day, or God forbid 2 eggs a week in some fucking cases, you're gonna die early of a heart attack. Now, we've got actual evidence proving the absolute contrary, but these people, they're not interested in truth. They're only interested in what is being spoon-fed to them by the medical establishment. They're not capable of reasoning. They're not capable of actual intuition, of actually experimenting. And this goes into diet as well, right? Some people genuinely believe that we humans lean towards a plant-based diet without understanding that, bro, our ancestors predominantly ate meat, and before fire was discovered, for millions and millions of years, we basically only ate raw meat. This should make intuitive sense to you, right? Especially in the winters, because yeah, in the summer, we consume some fruit and some other things. Okay, sure, but even then it was a minimal amount. But during the winters, all we were consuming was raw meat for the majority of the existence of our genetic code. And yet people want to argue that, oh, but certain studies show, bro, I don't give a shit what those studies show. Because again, they could be manufactured. Again, there could be an agenda to be pushed behind those studies, as they've done with tobacco, as they've done with cholesterol, and many, many different things. There's so many different examples of erroneous studies that were pushed to sell more of a thing, right? You gotta look at where does the funding for the studies come from. But no, these people, they can't think critically. They think that we're the crazy ones for actually using our brain cells to understand reality beyond what people spoon feed you, okay? As far as these things are concerned, there's only one truth, there's only one reality. And if you base yourself on the scientific research and the current peer-reviewed papers, well, guess what? You're never gonna have a consistent worldview. So try new things. Look into different perspectives. I also read a lot of books about natural hair care, about what certain tribes do to preserve their hair and increase its quality. I didn't just read scientific papers, I actually ventured outside and looked at wisdom from many different places to craft the regimen that allowed me to reverse my hair loss naturally, okay? And these people are so funny when they tell me that it's fake, when the evidence is right there. It has objectively worked for me. Or do I just not exist? Like, it's so funny how far people are willing to push their delusion just to preserve their worldview built on a foundation of lies because it's tied to their ego. So my final message in this video, okay, is try new things, experiment. Yes, do research, but actually do research beyond the current scientific consensus, because there is wisdom to be found everywhere. You don't even need to buy my protocol, okay? The truth is out there for everybody to find. My protocol is mainly there for those who want everything in one place with detailed implementation while also supporting the channel. So you don't have to do all this trial and error and guesswork bullshit, because yeah, it can take a lot of time. Yeah, it can be fairly painful. Always keep learning and don't allow the slaves to prevent you from exploring truth beyond the mainstream paradigm. Keep ascending.